So Micah Parsons believes a few Dallas Cowboys players can make an All-Pro jump in 2024, and he mentioned two of them by name. We'll talk about them both, and we wonder who might number three be. Let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, catching up with you guys in between with these quick-hitting videos. We are officially in the dead period. Let's face it, this is what the dead period looks like. It's June. There's no Cowboys practice scheduled. We're going to get very few, I believe, comments from players here and there. Media availability sessions are dead until training camp. There won't be press conferences. So, we're about to embark on this journey together, but we'll keep finding things to talk about. And one of those things comes from Micah Parsons' comments earlier in the month, specifically when mandatory minicamp was going on. And Micah was asked about the way that the Cowboys did things in free agency, right? Hey, what do you feel about them not spending money? That's basically what Micah was asked. And Micah, unsurprisingly, threw out the company line when he was asked about it. And I'm talking about him saying that, hey, we've got 7 All-Pros. It's what he said. I believe the Cowboys had 9, including first team and second team for the 2023 season, which is a good point in the sense that, hey, we still should be better, which is what Micah is trying to say. But he says, if you got to pay CD, you're talking about $20-30 million. That's a salary for 3 players, which is almost an exact copy of what Jerry Jones said earlier in the offseason, by the way. So he threw the company line out there. And Micah said that additionally, he expects other Cowboys players to take an All-Pro jump. And he mentioned 2 of them by name, kind of suggested that there was a third one, but didn't bring up his name or didn't specify. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but here's his actual quote though. He said, we've got at least 3 other guys I know can be All-Pro. I think Jake Ferguson can be All-Pro. I think a lot of guys are going to have breakout years. He added, Tyler Smith, I think, will be a first-team All-Pro this year. So just right there, he talked about 2 All-Pro jumps. One, Jake Ferguson becoming a first-time AP, and then Tyler going from second team to first team honors in 2024. He did say we've got at least 3 other guys. So there is a third one that Micah did not mention. I'm going to open this up to the comments right now. Who do you think is number 3? I will touch on this later on the video, by the way. But first, let's talk about the guys that he did name. Let's talk about Jake Ferguson being tossed out there by Micah as a potential All-Pro player down the road. I think that's a fair assessment. Because you know why? Jake Ferguson is actually getting better and is going to continue to get better. Just look at these numbers right here, by the way, from Mr. John Machado over at The Athletic, right? These are the numbers of the players that actually won All-Pro, and they're compared to Jake Ferguson. George Kittle had 1,020 yards, which is obviously a lot for only 65 catches, which is the list out of the 3 names that are up on the screen right now. Had only 6 touchdowns, but still enough to get it in the All-Pro. Sam Laporta, though, does not reach 1,000 yards. He gets close at 889, but he did get 10 touchdowns, and 86 catches, which is more than Jake Ferguson on both counts. I believe that for Jake Ferguson to get on that sphere of recognition, like an All-Pro kind of recognition, he either would need to get closer to the 1,000-yard mark from George Kittle, or he would need to get closer to the touchdown mark from Sam Laporta, which sat at 10 at the end of the 2023 season. It's either one of those 2 if Jake Ferguson wants to reach that pick of tight ends out there in the league. Now, can he get there? Is essentially the question that then we ask ourselves. And I believe he can, specifically for a couple reasons that I've got right here. Number one is I think the Cowboys offense became a very pass-happy one after the Chargers game. And the numbers are reflected on Jake Ferguson's stat sheet, for example, right? Where from week 7 on, Jake Ferguson averaged 6.6 targets per game and 4.5 catches per game, which is okay, more than okay production for a tight end who plays on the same offense as CeeDee Lamb does, with one of the highest target rates in the entire NFL. In the first 7 games, instead of having 4.5 catches per game, he had 3.5. That's a full catch fewer per game. And he had 4.8 targets per game instead of 6.6. That is a huge difference in production from Jake Ferguson. And I think that goes hand in hand with the simple fact that the Cowboys started throwing the football much more after that Chargers game, which was, after the loss versus the San Francisco 49ers. So there's a lot of factors that play into it. Now, what have we learned about Jake Ferguson? He's a beast on those vertical routes over the middle of the field, the seam routes. Dak Prescott is arguably the best quarterback throwing that kind of pass, and Jake Ferguson became arguably one of the better catchers for that specific route during the 2023 season. I think it's also a question as to what does CD's target share looks like going forward, and can Jake Ferguson establish himself? He's established himself as the number 1 tight end. Now he's got to fully establish himself as the number 2 target of Dak Prescott, even in front of Brandon Cooks, who is the number 2 wide receiver on the team. And if he can do that, he can get closer to the 1,000 yards. Let me say something, though. This is what is going to determine Jake Ferguson's All-Pro status going forward. Because here's my logic. Jake Ferguson recently talked to The Athletic about run blocking and how it's his focus right now. And he had some fun quotes over there. He had a quote about a big part of run blocking being willing to go out there and kill somebody, something like that, along those lines. But Ferguson said that the area that he needs to improve on is his run blocking. I don't believe that's what's going to get him All-Pro, though. It's going to be his production as a pass catcher. And, man, he's got that. He's got that. He just needs to take it a step further. Here's what I mean by saying that he's got it. 47 first downs in 2023. That's the 4th highest mark in the entire NFL. 47th if you're looking at entire players basically on the NFL world. I know, actually 31st. Sorry. Yards after catch per reception, he's 8th in the NFL among tight ends. 5.6 according to Pro Football Focus. So there's what we've seen from Jake Ferguson. There's the numbers as well. I think Jake could actually make the jump to first team All-Pro. The big problem, though, is that there's a lot of competition. Like there's TJ Hawkinson, there's Sam Laporta, there's George Kittle, there's Travis Kelce, who had a down year in 2023, but could still bounce back strong in 2024. Now, the other name that was brought up by Micah, Tyler Smith, second team All-Pro behind Joe Thuney in 2023. I'm not going to spend as much time with Tyler Smith here, but let me say something very quickly. He had the 4th best pressure rate allowed, according to Pro Football Focus, among guards, while Joe Thuney was 23rd. And I do agree that Joe Thuney is one of the best in the game. I'm just not going to act like you couldn't have given the first team honors to Tyler Smith, because you absolutely could have. Maybe a big part of the tiebreaker was the fact that Joe Thuney did play 17 games versus Tyler's 14, and maybe that was a bad tiebreaker for him. But Tyler Smith could have been first-team All-Pro. A lot of people talked about Joe Thuney neutralizing some of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. Tyler did the same. Tyler faced Aaron Donald and did not break a sweat in 2024. He faced Jalen Carter, had an amazing game against him as well. Tyler Smith was second-team All-Pro in large part because of that. He had some premier marquee matchups, and he won them. Won them all. Tyler Smith was the best interior offensive lineman in the Cowboys. Like, better than Zach Martin, for sure. Even though Zach Martin was first-team All-Pro, Tyler had a better 2023, period. And as a run blocker, you're talking about a mean, nasty dude that generated movement that looks much more improved than what he looked like in 2023. It's all on upwards for Tyler Smith, who is now just focusing on playing guard and how that will factor into his weight, for example, right? He will be able to add more weight to dominate even more in the interior now that he doesn't need to worry about playing on the outside, which is something that Mike McCarthy noted on an earlier press conference this very month. Now, as far as number 3, who is number 3 on the All-Pro jumps that Micah talked about in his quotes? Looking forward to seeing who your answers are. I could only land on one player. Because remember, first team All-Pro or making the jump from second to first team All-Pro. I could only land on one name. And I wondered if Ozo Odighizuwa could be the guy that Micah has in mind. Also, I understand some of the concerns, right? People have pointed out that maybe toward the back end of the season, he kind of has a little bit of a decline, or at least has had one of those early in his career. But Ozo Odighizuwa is one of the most productive 3 techniques in the NFL. And keep in mind, the Associated Press gives the All-Pro to 2 3 techniques pretty much every time. Otherwise, Dexter Lawrence would already have an All-Pro as a nose tackle for the New York Giants. But I thought it's interesting that Ozo Odighizuwa could be the guy that Micah is talking about, just because we've seen the production at the defensive tackle position, and I'm not sure who else I would bet on. Like, sure, you could maybe jump on like Dak going from second team All-Pro to first team All-Pro, but Micah did say, and I quote, "We've got at least 3 other guys I know can be All-Pro," and this is after shouting out last year's All-Pros. Oza is my guy. I'm looking forward to seeing who you guys said in the chat. I don't know if you could add one of the safeties maybe in the conversation, but I kind of hesitate to go down that route. The cornerbacks already have All-Pros. Linebacker, I'm not sure. You could be looking at an All-Pro there. So ultimately, I do come down only to Oza Odighizuwa. Looking forward to seeing what your answers are, though, because I might be missing somebody. Speaking of, hit the like button for me if you enjoyed the show. And remember, we are live Sunday and Thursday night, 8 p.m. This Thursday, crossover show, Skywalker Steel is going to be on primetime, so make sure you don't miss it. In the meantime, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great start to the week. Bye-bye.